It's a stressful old business, but I did manage to get it bang on the centre line, if maybe half a metre off its mark.
The pilot gave me a really bad thumbs down there. He really did. He looked a bit annoyed. I think it's probably because we stopped quite suddenly. Simon.
Evan.
How did I do?
How did you do? Well, for a novice marshaller, that was excellent. 400 tonnes in your fingertips, and you got it bang on the mark there. Excellent, very well done. It's very, very important to make sure that this aircraft parks on the correct stopping position.
Because if he doesn't, they can't get the
passengers off, exactly. And Heathrow's operating at 99.2% capacity. As soon as an aircraft pushes back off of a stand, another one arrives onto a stand. There are people waiting to turn that aircraft around as quickly and as safely as possible.
And occasionally, planes are queuing up waiting for their parking space, really, aren't they?
Correct, but provided that we have a blue sunny day today, then everything should be working like clockwork. But thankfully a good day today, and very well done. That was really very, very good.
Marshalling day is over.
Most planes are now guided automatically to their stands, though some are still marshalled by the experts. The airport has seen phenomenal change in its 65-year history, and it's reacted to it in a very British way. Because whereas other countries have master-planned their big airports, Heathrow is a classic case of build as you go.
Civil flying gets going again, and Britain begins the fight for her old place on the skylines of the world.
It was built as an RAF base and handed over to civilian use in 1946. That year, it handled 63,000 passengers from tents alongside the runway.
Here, a major air junction is being operated, while the buildings and runways are still growing up around it.
By 1951, it was shifting 800,000 passengers a year and rising. It's managed to keep raising the number of passengers year on year because planes have got bigger and by gradually building bigger terminals.
The architecture and interior decoration in this building provide an atmosphere in keeping with its importance as one of the greatest centres of international air traffic in the world.
Today, it's still building, and it handles 69 million passengers a year, off no more runways than it had in 1946. That means the people who make this place tick have been forced to become ever more ingenious to get the most out of what they've got.
The airport seems to build piece by piece. They've never quite finished it, and there's always something else going on. How does that affect what you guys do?
Well, that adds to the challenge and the complexity every day because it's like a big fluid jigsaw. All the planes keep coming and we have to find a space for them, but the picture keeps changing. Bits of taxiway are taken away from us, so we have to work around that. Stands are closed, etc., etc.
Give me some of the tricks of the trade that you guys use when you're trying to get the maximum use of the runways.
It's not a first-come, first-served basis. We get the aircraft and we shuffle them around at the runway to maximise the runway use.
Here's what Dave and his fellow controllers have to do. If they put big planes in front of small planes, they have to leave bigger gaps to account for the vortex the big planes leave in their wake. So instead, they try to bunch planes of similar sizes together to reduce the gaps.
So when I am in a plane circling around somewhere over the southeast of England, that's because you're shuffling my plane into the right kind of queue to get the most out of the runway.
That's correct, and I don't apologise for that. It's all about maximum runway usage.
Heathrow often gets a bad press, but really you can only marvel at the resourcefulness of the people who make it work within all the constraints. And in a way, it's a good example of a British approach to infrastructure. You under-provide it and you use ingenuity to get by. We're world champions at muddling through. As I say, you can marvel at it and then remember, muddling through can only get you so far.
We're at a crunch point because Heathrow's full. Other airports have space, But Heathrow is special. It's one of the world's hub airports. That means passengers don't just fly here to get to London, they fly here to catch planes onto somewhere else. Now, Britain's aviation bosses argue that's good for us all, as it allows them to lay on routes which otherwise wouldn't be viable, routes to parts of the world which might be crucial to the future of the British economy.
We're not very well connected to growth economies. I've stopped using emerging economies because, China is the second biggest economy in the world. Brazil has overtaken the UK, so you can't really call these emerging. They've emerged, but they're growing at a significant pace. And if we're serious about playing a leading role in the global economy, you're going to have to connect to these destinations. And that's really going to be a challenge for Heathrow and for the UK.
Good evening. In the coming age of jumbo jets and supersonic speed, how and where will we make room for new airports in England's green and pleasant land?
You see, this question's nothing new. The problem of how to maintain airport capacity in the southeast has bedeviled successive governments for decades.
London faces erosion of its position as the hub of international air transport. Heathrow Airport.
And now the issue is back. Do we build an extra runway at Heathrow, as Willie Walsh wants, or a brand new airport in the Thames? All options are being looked at by a government review. None is easy. Now, if you build a third runway at Heathrow, is that going to do it? Or are you going to be saying, in 30 years' time, we need a fourth runway or a fifth runway, at which point we might say, why didn't we build an airport somewhere else where we could do all of that in the first place?
I think that is the question that needs to be answered. My own view is that a third runway isn't the long-term solution. I think a third runway gives you 25 years. It keeps you in the game. So, you're quite right. I think it would be wrong for me to try and convince people that if you build a third runway at Heathrow, that's it, and we're now future-proofed. With the projected growth in air travel, I don't think it would do enough. But at least it gives you time to consider options.
But notice, almost all of those options are in the south of England, which means that airport capacity is a classic example of a very British infrastructure dilemma.
Here's the problem. Britain needs more infrastructure, but the very places that it needs it most are the places that are most crowded, have most people. And yet it's the place where the crowds are that there isn't room to build anything, where you meet most objections. Yet when it comes to a decision over airports, where and whether you build another hub, well, this touches on issues around where we expect people to live, what kind of economy we want to have. These are issues way above the pay grade of people involved in aviation. These are questions of grand national strategy. Difficult questions, mind you, but they really can't be ducked.
North, south, east, west, hub airports or alternative investments. There's a huge menu of infrastructure opportunities in Britain. You can argue about them all, but just because decisions are difficult doesn't mean we shouldn't face up to them. And there's an additional economic reason for looking at how much we invest in our future. To understand it, an example from our past.
It's pretty obvious that we have the power to change our infrastructure. What's more interesting is that infrastructure has the power to change us, to be transformative, to alter our behaviour, our way of thinking, often in very unexpected ways.
This rather beautiful locomotive is Planet, a replica of the very first one to run down these tracks in 1830 as part of the Liverpool and Manchester Railway, Britain's first intercity line. Today, it's part of Manchester's Museum of Science and Industry. But back then, it was 30 miles of track, which changed Britain forever.
This was built in '92, but it's pretty well the same as the one that was built in 1830.
Visually it is, but it's made with modern materials, and we've got modern safety features, like brakes.
Did they really not have brakes originally?
They were more interested in making it go.
The original motivation for the Liverpool and Manchester Railway had been to carry freight. Local businessmen had wanted to link the two cities. But guess what? Once the line had been built, it actually turned out that people wanted to travel as well. And pretty soon, passengers were the dominant traffic. What had happened was the line had transformed the geography of the region in a way that no one had anticipated. This railway, it took the brakes off the development of the economy of the region.
Yes, here in Manchester, well, of course, not only were the needs of the existing cotton mills satisfied, but a lot of other people said, right, now we've got the opportunity of setting up further cotton mills, and the textile industry expanded very quickly. And as soon as the railway opened and made it so much easier to get the cotton imports, the food imports, and all the other 101 other things that were required here in Manchester, then of course the numbers of ships coming through the port of Liverpool instantly doubled. You know, it was a huge increase. That made an enormous difference to the port of Liverpool.
You buy a railway and you get a flourishing port for free. The Liverpool-Manchester Railway showed how infrastructures had a transformative effect on Britain's economy in the past. When you bring people together, you create new economic opportunities that you couldn't have anticipated. There are huge benefits to shrinking distances between people. It made our economy more productive back then, and there's evidence it can do that now. And there are plenty of ways to do it. Go further and faster in linking the cities of the north of England, for example. Or go further and faster in creating space for London to grow.
We can use infrastructure to bring people closer together. But the question is, where should we focus our investment? If we spend all our money around London, as it sometimes feels we are doing, well, then you drive people to London. It becomes self-fulfilling. That's not a very good idea. If you don't spend money in London, you invest it all around Manchester, for example, well, then you're in danger of choking the economy in London, which is a fast-growing part of the country. So that's not a good idea. Isn't there a case for doing both, for investing everywhere? Maybe we just have to give our country some options.
This government and the last have recognised these arguments. And this is their big hope for bringing us closer together. It's Curzon Street in Birmingham, built by Robert Stephenson in the 1830s as the magnificent terminus for the London-Birmingham railway line. Today, it's rather faded, but there is a plan. It's the proposed site for the new Birmingham station for High Speed 2. The new fast rail line from London to Birmingham, and in time beyond that, to the north. The government hopes it can shift the nation's centre of economic gravity. Doug Oakervee is a wily infrastructure veteran, and the Brit who oversaw the building of Hong Kong's new airport in the middle of the South China Sea in the 1990s. Today, he's got an even bigger job on his hands, making High Speed 2 become a reality.
Right, Doug, looks like a bit of a wasteland at the moment. Some might call it a nature reserve or a park, but what is this going to be if you get your way?
Well, this is going to be the real hub of High Speed 2. This is Birmingham Station, with the platforms going off in that direction. And the old Curzon Street station that was built in 1838 will be brought back in to the new station and refurbished completely. So bringing in the original history of Birmingham's railway from 1838